single source of truth. So, and in order to change it, we have to dispatch what's called an action. And that goes to what's referred to as a reducer that updates the state based on the previous state. So actually I have it nicely typed out and succinct here. So I'll just go over here and type it. So yeah, so Redux state management more predictable. In order to change the storage state, the action describing that change must be dispatched to the reducer, which is a function that looks at the previous state and then combines the two or updates the state based on the previous state, but doesn't change the previous state. So we get like a new state returned from that action being dispatched. So what is a store? Because I just started using all that jargon again.
Yes.
What did you guys come up with for this one?
The store is just an immutable object which holds data.
Immutable object. Yep. That holds the state, right, of the application. All right. And then what is an action?
An action is a JavaScript object that contains information for a store.
And then what is the dispatch?
So dispatch, there are functions that are called
All right. And then what is the reducer?
So the reducer is a pure function which takes an action and the previous state of the application and returns the new state.
And what is Redux middleware?
I think it's a piece of code that sits in between the action and the dispatcher, and you can also extend it through third-party points.
Why would we use Redux middleware?
Authentication.
So we could already do a lot of this stuff in React, right? But again, like we would use this because if the application became like as complicated as like Facebook, or I don't think Google uses React. They might use Redux, but so yeah, so we start getting into like needing these like kind of bigger tools to do the job. So what is the hook useReducer? Is this Redux?
No, I don't think so.
Right. Redux. Can we use it in can we replace it use state with useReducer?
I suppose so, yes.
Yeah, we can. Yep. So used in replacement. Use state. So let's say like the application is starting to get larger, you can opt to use useReducer, this hook, which will, make it so that you don't have to use Redux. So it's kind of like sits in the middle of just using React and use state hook and a bigger library like a Redux. And yeah, for more complex state. And how about the useContext hook? So it's allows for functional components. Let's say functional is to take advantage of the context API, which leads us to that begs the question, what is context? So let's say you have data that is needed by a larger portion of the application. So context allows you to, instead of having to pass the props down to every child, grandchild, and so forth, so on and so forth that needs it, you have this context that you wrap around the application, and then you can unwrap it into any component that you want to, have that piece of data or props. So when to use context. So kind of what I just said, like here I have it written very succinctly. So when the data is only needed by one component or a component and its immediate children. So I skipped this one. Let me see. So when you have a piece of data that is needed, by a larger portion of the application, and then what is context? So yeah, let me get this real quick. So kind of skipped ahead. So context is an API included in React that allows for passing information to child components without having to pass props. And then when to use it is when you have data that you have an application that's kind of growing and growing and becoming unmanageable, and you need to pass it to other parts of the application or a larger portion of the application, then you can use the context to do that. So again, in this situation, like you probably wouldn't need it for the myReads library, right? Obviously that can be done without this, but for something more complicated like the upcoming project, you could start to need something like this. So when not to use context. So that was what I was posting before. So let's see. When data is only needed by one component or a component in its immediate children. So as you discovered, context is not as simple as passing a prop, right? There's a lot of boilerplate and setup to use context properly. So if passing the prop is easier, then you just go that way. So you don't want to add extra complexity if you already have a more simpler solution. So, and then here's the final question. Can we use context and reducers together?
I think so.
Yeah. So let me post this and we can take a look at it. So it gives us a way to pass information to the whole application without using props. And the reducer gives us a predictable pattern for updating state. And so using these two is very powerful, and you can build much larger applications and keep them maintainable. So that's kind of the moral of the story. So then I kind of have here this final recommendation. So we could take a look at that. So what is recommended? So learn Redux, right? It's still widely used. Like Jack showed that chart that's kind of going up and to the right in terms of Redux's popularity. So as new developers learn React, they learn Redux, kind of just like a naturally thing to do. And the Udacity curriculum wants you to use Redux for the next project. And then you want to understand hooks and useReducer and useContext. You have access now to this advanced workshop that goes over advanced hooks like useContext and useReducer. And he covers those a lot more in depth. And Udacity does not cover those in their curriculum. I would say for time management purposes, just stick to Udacity and learning Redux, because that's the project that you have to meet a deadline with. And then as you continue learning about state management, I would learn this one versus like the ones we mentioned earlier, like MobX and Apollo Client. And there's a blog post that Kent wrote that it's off his site, but I'll include it with this recording, where he goes over how much he loves React Query. And yeah. So how are you guys doing? I think Samuel, you mentioned that you're working on the My Reads. How's it? How about you, Renee? Are you on the My Reads project?
I already finished it.
Oh, you did? Okay. So you passed that?
Yeah.
Or you're waiting to hear back?
No, I passed it.
Oh, wonderful. Congratulations. So what'd you think of it?
I would say it was the hardest project until now, just because React was, for me at least, the hardest topic to understand.
Okay.
But it was definitely not as much to do as like in the dinosaur project, for example.
Okay. Yeah. So like typing out the vanilla JavaScript, it can get real messy really fast, whereas
Yeah.
React forces you to keep things very nice and neat with these component composition. Cool. All right. Well, I mean, that's basically what I have for today. And tomorrow you'll have another session where you get more practice with using Redux and React. So definitely attend that.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
I've been trying to catch up on these, of course. What's the difference between the context and the state?
The difference between the context and the state?
Yes.
Well, you can't use context to update the state. So context is used for passing props, which state is a property of props. So yeah. Let me see if there's anything else. Using context and reducers together. Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Like with context, you're basically passing props, but it's a mechanism for doing it throughout the whole application versus having to keep passing it from parent to child, parent to child, parent to child. So, I mean, for the most part, if you're not working on like a Facebook type application, then you don't really, there's no real reason to use it. It's very much overkill. Like there's an article I have from this guy, his name is Michael Jackson. He's a partner with the guy Travis that teaches the Udacity curriculum. And he has this whole video about how you can achieve what most applications need that are using context by just thinking about the composition of the application and the way in which the props flows through the application. So I'll include that as part of this recording to help clarify that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. All right, guys. Thanks for sticking it out. I appreciate it. And yeah, good luck on this project.
Thanks.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.